on here. So I just wanted to say welcome to all of our alumni and friends for our first ever alumni virtual town hall. If you don't know me, I am Julie Kientz. I'm professor and chair of the department, and I've been faculty here for 12 years. And this is my first year as chair after being interim chair for 6 months starting in September. So it's definitely been an interesting first year to being in this role. Usually we would have been meeting to hold an in-person barbecue in the fall. And so this event is an attempt to sort of bring all the HCDE alumni together and stay connected as a community in lieu of us being able to be here in person. But I'm hoping that, even though we aren't having a nice barbecue in the nice Seattle September sun, that we are able to bring in some more alumni from across the globe today. So feel free to use the chat if you'd like to share maybe where you're coming in from so we can have a sense here of where everybody's coming from. So today I'm going to give you an update about what HCDE looks like during COVID-19, share some recent highlights for the year, and then we're going to hear from some of our faculty who are doing some research projects related to the pandemic. And I wanted to first start out by acknowledging the Coast Salish peoples on this land on which you're working today. The land touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We respectfully acknowledge their stewardship of this land through the generations. So all of our alumni, students, and friends on this call are familiar with the importance of taking the human experience into account first. So I wanted to just start by acknowledging our gratitude to the first humans who lived not only in the land where UW sits, but also on the land that lies wherever you're logging in from in North America. So if you'd like, as an action item, if you want, you can take a look at what lands you're on by visiting the website native-land.ca. And that's a great resource for looking at that. Now, I wanted to introduce our Alumni Leadership Board, which is a great new program that has just been launched in the last couple of years. And Charlotte Akers is supposed to be here as the president to introduce you, but unfortunately she might be having technical difficulties. So I'll just give you a brief overview on her behalf. So the mission of the Alumni Leadership Board is to connect leaders across the alumni board and the alumni and student community, build career connections, and provide industry skill shares outside the academic curriculum beyond their time at HCDE. And through a variety of deliverables ranging from events to evergreen content, the board will work to further the HCDE UX community in both Seattle and beyond. And the board activates talented alumni who have a desire to give back to the next generation of HCDE graduates and build the HCDE network for years to come. So some of their focus areas are on continuing education, making connections across alumni, and publishing. So here's just a view of some of our members. So some of you may have gone to school with some of these folks, and maybe some of you are in the audience right now. And here's just a list of the names of folks on our Alumni Leadership Board. And we have a two-year term with overlapping terms. And so the first year started with half of these people, and then several continued on to this year. So there's nice turnover between the board. I see some of you are going on in the chat, and I can see that you're coming in from Seattle and beyond, and it's really great to see you all here. Charlotte also invites everybody to connect with the board. They have an email address, hcdealb@gmail.com, and you can get involved in volunteering and join the mailing list. And they also have an alumni survey that they're filling out to build networks and mentorship connections. And lastly, they have a medium where you can follow along and find out about various alumni events for the department. So maybe Stacia, if you have a chance to share some of these links within the chat with everybody after advance beyond the slide, that might be great.
Can do.
Great, thank you. All right, so if Charlotte is able to connect later, I'll have her say hello to you all after we move on to the next step. So before we get started with talking about research, I want to give some highlights around what the department's been up to this year. So just to give you a sense, since the department has probably changed a lot, maybe since some of you were members of our community, that we're now up to 177 undergraduate students. The College of Engineering has moved to a direct-to-college admission where students are admitted to the College of Engineering. About half of them are admitted to the College of Engineering their freshman year, and they join the department usually sometime in their and get placed into HCDE. And then about half of our students also come from interest changers and transfer students. We are up to 278 master students, so it's our largest program by far, and a mix of full-time and part-time. We have 56 PhD students, and this year we have 30 UCD certificate students. And just a little bit of information, 69% of our students identify as women, 44% are students of color, and 23% are international students. We also are growing in our faculty as well too. We now have 17 tenured or tenure track faculty, 8 career faculty teaching professors, 17 adjunct faculty. So those are faculty across UW who are affiliated with the department. And then we have 31 affiliate faculty who are from outside of UW and are part of organizations like the ones that you're at. We have 2 faculty that we're welcoming this year. Sarah Coppola, who's an assistant teaching professor. She comes to us from Johns Hopkins and was a human factors engineering and anesthesiology. And we also have assistant professor Sucheta Ghoshal joining us in January. She's just now completing her PhD at Georgia Tech in human-centered computing. Her research looks at how grassroots social movements use technology to support community organizing. So we're both really excited to have some familiar faces from here, as well as welcoming some new faces this year. HCDE is maybe looking a little different this year, but we do continue our same dedication to the valuable educational experience for all of our students and supporting our staff, faculty, and our network of instructors in their health and well-being. So as you all know from being human-centered designers, constraints make you more creative, and the constraints of the pandemic have been no exception to that. Our faculty instructors have also been doing a lot of really creative things with teaching. So for example, in spring quarter, Professor Nadia Peak taught our digital fabrication class, and we delivered 3D printers to students all over. And she taught a class remotely with students having their own 3D printers sitting next to their computers over Zoom. So that still gave them that necessary hands-on experience to learn the tools while also staying safe from the pandemic. We're also working on supporting our collective mental health and trying to come together as a community in new ways online. From our very active Slack server, we're organizing things like cooking together and games of Among Us. If any of you are playing that, we have a whole channel on that. We also have a mental health channel where our research scientist, Aylin Bjorling, an instructor, she hosts weekly mental health de-stressing activities via Zoom. And we've also been trying to do things like having weekly drop-in hours open to the whole community. And you can see most of us are very familiar with the Brady Bunch view on Zoom these days as we run all of our faculty meetings and retreats and everything online in this format. Just some other highlights from 2020 that are not necessarily pandemic related. We continue to be leading the field through research contributions and bridging new connections with industry. So for example, HCDE Associate Professor Kate Starbird, who you'll hear from in a little bit, and her PhD students in her lab have been tracking the spread of misinformation and disinformation surrounding the US election, and has been working with a nonpartisan election integrity partnership to bring together communities and trying to understand and track this misinformation, disinformation. Assistant Professor Nadia Peak was named to the MIT Technology Review's list of innovators under 35. She's had tremendous success this year in receiving several grants from the National Science Foundation, the Moore Foundation, the Sloan Foundation to develop new tools in the area of distributed manufacturing and digital fabrication. We also hosted an XR day last in March, and this was literally this is the last time I saw many people in person. This is one of the events that happened right in the beginning of March of the pandemic. And this was a large industry-focused event to bring together experts in the field of XR, AR, and VR to campus. And there's a series of talks and workshops around this, and we received a lot of really great feedback. And it was so successful that we're hoping to plan it again next time we can be together in person, hopefully sometime in late 2021. Also this fall, a number of our students and faculty have received Best Paper Awards at conferences, including CHI, CCW, and the Assets Conference on Accessibility and Design. We also remain highly interdisciplinary, so we can work hand in hand with domain experts and alongside communities we are designing for. So 2 recent exciting collaborations of work include Associate Professor Kate Starbird's founding director of the UW Center for an Informed Public, which is with the Information School and the Law School, to bring together technical, policy, and information science together to resist strategic misinformation, promote an informed society, and strengthen democratic discourse. In addition, Associate Professor Leah Finlater is a founding director of one of the founding directors of the Center for Research on Education and Accessible Technology and Experiences, or the CREATE Center. So CREATE brings together faculty from UW engineering departments, UW Medicine, and the Information School, working with industry partners to make technology accessible and the world accessible through technology. As you may have seen from me in an email sent out over the summer, HCDE is also committed to becoming an anti-racist community, and a number of initiatives and plans that we've been enacted in this year cover a wide range of activities. So this includes empowering and resourcing HCDE's diversity committee, including funding small grassroots grants specifically around diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. So this might include students wanting to reach out for their class projects and get funding to fund underrepresented communities as part of their work in human-centered design. We've also been adjusting our fundraising priorities to focus on new fellowships to support students. So we've been raising some new fellowships to support diversity of students, as well as funding for our new student emergency fund, which has been crucial in terms of supporting students through COVID. We've also been examining a number of processes within the department, including around admissions and hiring, and looking at those practices from a systemic racism standpoint. Faculty at our retreat also held a mini retreat to look at over the syllabi from various courses and do an analysis of how those syllabi could be presented in a more anti-racist perspective. We've also had our student associations create HC affinity groups to collect and share experiences with department leadership. So those are just some of the examples that we've been doing in our major efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also want to highlight the HCDE Student Emergency Fund, because this is something if you're interested in helping out and giving back to the department. We continue to adjust to this new normal and making sure that the students impacted by the pandemic are not disproportionately affecting our most vulnerable students that have significant financial hardship. So just to motivate where this is coming from, there was a study of 38,000 college students in the United States by the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice, and found that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, nearly 3 in 5 students are experiencing basic needs insecurity at four-year institutions. And at four-year institutions, 38% are affected by food insecurity and 15% are experiencing homelessness. So to help address this, we've been grateful to our community of alumni who have donated to establish the HCDE's Emergency Aid Fund to provide relief grants to students who are facing near-term financial hardship. So these students have not only been able to stay in the program, would not have been able to stay in the program without your support, and we as a community have a responsibility to support our most vulnerable students. We're still making relief grants to students as the pandemic persists. So if you want to contribute to this this effort, we'll include a link to donate as a thank you in an email after the event that you'll receive. So with that, I would like to move on to our panel. So for those of you who don't know, I want to introduce Associate Teaching Professor Brock Kraft, who will be the host for this panelist and the moderator, and I'm going to move into the role of being a panelist and no longer running the show. So I'm going to hand things over to Brock.
Thank you, Julie. So I'd like to first start off by again thanking everyone for being here today and sharing your time coming together with us. With over 80 attendees in this event, it's really exciting to have everyone here today. And I'm just thrilled to be here with you. So I'm going to, just as a reminder, I'm Brock Kraft. I'm the director of the undergraduate program and an associate teaching professor in HCDE. And I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we'll follow up by, I'll have some questions for them, and we'll follow up by Q&A. And I just want to remind you that in your Zoom client there's a Q&A button, and if you click on it, it'll open a window that I can see questions that you might want to pose to the panel, and then I can moderate and make sure that your questions get posed. So I'd like to introduce our panelists one by one. First, Charlotte Lee, Associate Professor in HCDE. Kate Starbird, Associate Professor in HCDE, and Julie Kientz, Professor and Department Chair in HCDE. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to talk about their work, and then we'll go on to the Q&A. So Charlotte, would you like to begin with us?
I would be very happy to begin. Thank you. It's so great to see all your names popping up. It's really a pleasure to be here and to get in contact with our alums. Yeah, so I want to talk about the COVID research I've been doing, and we've been asked to keep it short, just 3 to 5 minutes, so we have plenty of time for discussion. So I'm just going to give like a super brief commentary, which is that when the COVID situation started, I think I was in a tizzy like everyone else, thinking like, what is going on? What can I do to help? And I had a bit of a crisis thinking, what can I do to help? Because I'm really not good for doing much of anything except for research. so after like circling around, I was like, well, is there some research I can do? And I was thinking, well, you know, I'm not a crisis informatics person. I don't study disease, you know, what can I do? But then I realized that, you know, one of the core questions throughout my research is understanding how people coordinate to get work done under unstable and new circumstances. And I thought, well, this is definitely an unstable and new circumstance. So I started thinking, you know, more creatively, thinking about all of the research I've done on how people collaborate and coordinate, and started thinking about what I could do at the University of Washington. I'm a researcher of collaborative work, and I have a history of studying longitudinally over a very long period of time, researchers at the University of Washington, and students as well. And so I applied for NSF Rapid, which, as it sounds like, they review it rapidly and then they give you some amount of funding to do research. And so I said, look, I have a track record of getting into these complex organizations like the UW quickly. Let me get some funding so I can figure out how we can help. And so I brought my knowledge of coordination theory and additionally brought in some notions of resilience, including organizational resilience, which touched on a whole bunch of different literatures of resilience, which are about how people adjust to difficult circumstances and try to hopefully come out as well or better than they were before. And so since we got that funding, we started, as some of my colleagues at HCDE know, we started with HCDE itself as sort of like getting our feet wet. I had a great team of graduate student researchers, and we started looking at departments first, HCDE, epidemiology, English, some other departments. We also studied some efforts that were not department centric, looking at sort of grassroots efforts in the maker spaces, looking at how people were creating new ways and new standards for PPEs, specifically face shields, and how they were working across campus and with hospitals in order to distribute those. And across those looking at, and then also looking at various IT units, talking to associate deans, talking just to folks around campus. We started interviewing essential workers. So we've been studying essential workers and looking at the ways that they're working in place, in site, but also using digital technologies to do parts of their work. And so we've been able to sort of get this really interesting view, because the idea is like, we want to inform, you know, other universities, but we want to really look at all kinds of collaboration. It just happened to be the university was this big complex organization that we could get access to. And so we've been able, because we've looked at it, and we also interviewed undergraduates and graduate students as well, that we've been able to see folks who are doing all kinds of ways of changing the way they do things. You know, one of the ways that, you know, my research is different is because we're looking at it from a collaborative standpoint of like, how are you moving whole networks of people? How are you moving whole departments of people? How are you moving communities? How are communities making this transition? And so we were able to see like all of these like little movements that people are doing, well, you know, and a lot of them have to do with sort of supply chain-ish issues. Because one of the things we discovered that was really interesting was that even though we're physically distributed, a lot of us still live in the same city. So there's been a lot of like people getting in cars and dropping off supplies. We had a humanities department where they found a way to distribute these like precious books that the faculty had to the graduate students, because the graduate students couldn't do their work without these precious books, and the library was closed, or they were just, even if it was open, you couldn't get some of them. So there was, so we're working on some ways of discussing this sort of thing where you're like apart, but you're also together. Anyway, I could go on forever, but I think that's just a little taste of things that we're discovering. And there's much more to do, and we're hoping to come out with some best practices in the new year this year.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of the work that comes out of that, especially those best practices. So now I'd like to turn us to Kate Starbird, Associate Professor in HCDE. And maybe, Kate, you can tell us about what you've been working on in this crazy time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Charlotte, I'm just really happy to see all you here, and happy to have a chance to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing. Charlotte kind of set this up. This has been an interesting time for my team, which has actually grown considerably over the last few months. I'll talk a little bit about that here, but our work is in the area of crisis informatics. And what we do is we study the use of social media and other communication technologies during crisis events. And I was actually on sabbatical last year, kind of thinking about writing a book, had some retreats set up for the spring. And then when COVID hit, that really activated us, changed certainly what I was working on, and became the focus of a lot of our efforts. We still have some election stuff going on as well, but in particular, what we've been studying is the spread of rumors and misinformation, and now disinformation in the context of crisis events. And one of the things about crisis events is, and we've studied a lot of different events in the past, mostly like really contained events, like an earthquake or a hurricane. And what happens in a lot of events is they're often characterized by a lot of uncertainty, and like we don't know what's going on, and that uncertainty makes us anxious. And we want to know what's happening. We want to figure out what we can do about it. We want to know how it affects us, and we want to kind of learn how to take action. And in the absence of that information, during times of uncertainty, what we do as humans is we want to come together, we want to talk to each other, and we want to figure things out. And we call that collective sense making. And that process is part of the like human coping with a disaster event or a crisis event. And it's perfectly natural, but one of the byproducts of that sense-making activity is misinformation. That's false rumors can kind of come out of that process, and also that process can kind of be manipulated to spread disinformation, or information that has sort of a purpose behind it, someone's objective of manipulating the information space for their needs. So what we see in COVID-19 is almost a perfect storm for this kind of spread of misinformation, disinformation. We have an extended period of uncertainty, and not just like, okay, what's going on? It's scientific uncertainty. It's a novel disease. We didn't know how it spread. We didn't know how to prevent it. We didn't know whether social distancing would work or how they would work. We didn't know if masks worked. At first they said they didn't work. We shouldn't use them. Then they said we should. And so there was all this like extended period of uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, which we're still in to some extent, when will this end? Will the vaccines come? Will they work? Will people take them? Are they safe? All of that, we're anxious and we're disrupted, and our lives are being impacted. And this is an impetus for us to come together and try to figure things out. And again, we can see that process sometimes getting things right, and sometimes we've seen the spread of rumors, and then we've tracked sort of rumors have become more, some of them have become politicized as COVID-19 sort of mixed in with election 2020. We could see those things kind of come together, and those processes of sense making be manipulated for people's political objectives. And then we're seeing sort of conspiracy theorizing, where some of these rumors are becoming, they're growing, and they're becoming more rigid and sturdy over time, and spreading sort of alternative views of things. So we've been just activated to research that, and we is actually quite big for me right now, as I with collaborators in the iSchool and the law school, helped to co-found a Center for an Informed Public, which we founded in December of last year. We were barely hiring people in the winter, and there are people that I've now worked with very closely who I never got to meet face to face prior to this. So we have a brand new center that's come together, during this time, and tons of great students and postdocs that are working with us. And we did come together and write an NSF grant to study, in particular, borrowing from our expertise in crisis informatics, which I have a longtime collaborator at the iSchool, Emma Spiro. She and I have done a lot of work together and really understand sort of rumoring misinformation during crisis events. And then Jevin West, who does a lot of stuff around science, misinformation and science. And so we've really looked at the politicization of science and the misuse and misinterpretation of science in the spread of misinformation during COVID-19. And one of the things we're looking at is the mask debate, or the conversations around masks and how they've kind of evolved over time. And we have a PhD student, Andrew Beers, who's talking about how do different, how do people who are having these conversations about masks pull in science in different ways to argue all viewpoints you can imagine. They try to bring in, they effectively bring in science in different ways. And so we're thinking about the intersection of sort of online interaction, collective sense making, and the use of science in those kinds of conversation. And that's our first project, but we've got others coming behind it. And unfortunately, we'll probably be working on these data sets for the next 10 years because they're so rich in terms of like the kinds of things we're seeing around how people share information and misinformation, and how we're manipulated with disinformation during crisis events.
Wow, thank you, Kate. I'm really looking forward to the results of that work, and I'm sure you'll be busy working on it for a long time to come. So hurry up. Thanks so much. Now turning to Julie, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Absolutely. So like Kate and Charlotte, right when the pandemic was happening and all of us all over the world were having this rapid transition to remote learning. I have two young children, a 5-year-old and just turned actually 4, he was 4 at the time, and a 7-year-old at the time. And, with very, very little notice, their teachers had to suddenly move everything online and remote. And many elementary education teachers had absolutely zero experience with technology and teaching with technology. It just isn't something that happens in the classroom. And all of a sudden, I was observing them being forced to use these tools that were in no way intended to be used for these young children for this purpose. And so my HCDE hat got put on, and I thought that, like, oh gosh, this is actually really, really interesting to study. And I think that we as design researchers could have a lot to sort of understand and think about during this time. And so we'd already had my students and I had a long set of collaborations specifically studying families and screen time, co-design with families. And we'd already been using some remote design tools. So we've been using a method called the asynchronous remote communities method to bring together communities to design with over time. And so we were able to mobilize pretty quickly after the pandemic and apply for one of these NSF rapid grants that Kate and Charlotte also received to put together a plan to study this. And at the time we thought we had very little time. It's like, oh my gosh, this pandemic's only going to be happening for 2 months. And we have to rush to get this because otherwise kids are going to be back in school and we won't be able to study this anymore. Little did we know. But we did get the funding together and funded. I got a great team of students. And this is work in collaboration with Professor Sean Munson and HCDE, along with Alexis Hineker and Jason Yip in the Information School. And we've all worked together to design a study with families across the United States to help them understand the concerns around technology use in schools and young children, and also to help envision new ideas. And so we deployed the asynchronous remote communities method with 30 families for 10 weeks. And so we recruited a set of diverse families into 3 groups of 10. So we had 10 families who were sort of a melting pot group, a really big mix of families across the spectrum. Our second group was specifically focused on single parents who had a little less support. And our third group was focused on what we called resource constrained families. So families with the lower end of our income spectrum, as well as people who had limited access to devices. And so we brought all of them on to private Slack channels. So those of you might be familiar with Slack. And for 10 weeks, we communicated with these families and had them share code. We gave them weekly prompts on things like what was working well. We had them do diary studies. We had them do writing love letters and breakup letters to their favorite technologies, their least favorite technologies that they were using during this time, to really understand from a user research perspective what was working and what wasn't. And then we switched over to a co-design phase. And so with the families together, they were helping us sketch new ideas, both the wild and crazy ideas, as well as the really practical ideas. Like, gosh, my 3-year-old just really needs a big mute button. Like, he can't use the mouse. Like he just needs one of those, like, Office Depot stop buttons that just says mute and unmute, because it was such a nightmare to watch him trying to navigate mute and unmute and Zoom there. So everything from the really practical to the wild, and you're like a robot that would help you like spray hand sanitizer on your hands, and so it's really fun design with these families to think about what they need. And I'm going to actually, I saw, Dominic, you had a really great question around economic differences and some of these being educational issues. I'm just going to jump in and address that, because this is something that was huge that we were seeing right away. And that families, especially in our limited resource group, where one family sharing a single touchscreen device and trying to navigate this was definitely a bit of a challenge. And so we're working on putting out some best practices guides for both teachers and designers in terms of how they can both navigate the educational experience as well as the design experience of these. And we have a blog that I can point you to, that we're sort of blogging about our results. And we're also offering, so if any of you in the audience are actually working on any educational technologies, we're offering office hours with our research team, so we can kind of share one-on-one with you just the things that we're learning. So happy to reach out there, and I'll stop there so we have time for Q&A.
Thanks, Julie. So now perhaps we can get to know a little bit more about how each of you has been undertaking your work. I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but some things I wanted to explore with you are how you've translated your early findings of the work you've been doing to those who might benefit the most of it from it, if you've had a chance. Have you been able to yet start to translate those findings into differences, or to get them to reach people who are interested?
One of the things our group has been doing is trying to reach broad public audiences quickly with research that is timely, that is time sensitive, right? And the hard thing is that it doesn't necessarily align with the peer-reviewed research process. And so there's this balance of like, right, how do we share things that we know that we feel pretty solid about in ways that don't necessarily go through the peer review process? But then our research gets to the heart of this too. We're studying how science is misused. Then are we giving credibility of science to stuff that isn't science? And so we're trying to navigate that. And certainly we've been in conversations and panels and talking to folks to understand some of these phenomena. And we've put out like an op-ed, which showed one of our analyses and had, it showed what we're talking about, shows what we're doing, but it's not peer reviewed. It's not kind of the same thing. So we're trying to figure out ways to like translate what we're doing at timescales that actually can have impact on things that are moving quickly without sort of risking diluting science, diluting our own voice, making mistakes in other ways. It's a really interesting balance. We've been doing that with our Election 2020 research as well, is trying to put out quick analyses, but to try to communicate them in ways that make it very well known that this isn't peer reviewed in the same way that our typical papers would be. And it's hard. It's a challenge for researchers.
Yes, public science communication can be really difficult, and there's certainly a clear distinction between sort of the academic peer review process and still communicating meaningful results to the wider audiences. Did anybody else want to address that question as well?
I mean, it's a hard question. I think, it's the moment that the work got funded, I was already being asked to give talks. I'm sure Julian's came over as well. It's like, give talk about this research that you haven't done yet. Because people are just so eager for reflection, for insight, and I have had the opportunity to give a couple talks, and just framing it of like, this is work in progress. I haven't really had time to do the full analysis and everything. In a way, because the crisis ended up being so long, it kind of both like made it harder to collect data in some ways and easier because like the time window got stretched out. And one of the things that I think has been useful really is just having, I spoke earlier in my introductory comments about having this background and looking at people trying to coordinate in new and unstable situations. And in fact, because we haven't analyzed a lot of the data yet, what I've been able to bring to people is just that background knowledge, that it's actually helpful for me to be able to tell people, you're struggling because this is hard. you know, and here's actual like research that we've been doing on coordination for decades that show why this is hard. That it's not just a matter of like you've moved your laptop to home, it's a matter of you are now in a co-working situation with your family members, you know, all of who are online at the exact same time, you know, if you're fortunate enough to even be in that situation where you can work at home. And that, you know, everybody in your network is also making this shift. And so everyone has to find new ways of working together. And so the problem is actually much harder and more complicated than people give themselves credit for. So in a way, I feel like in the short term, that's like the value I've been able to give is say like, cut yourself some slack, you know, this is really hard. And that resonates with people and it's been useful to people. And I think the other bit is that in the data, there was such a strong feeling of emotion, you know, because we're talking about how people are adjusting, and there's a lot of emotion in terms of people trying to take care of their students, people trying to take care of their supervisors, people are trying to take care of their coworkers, people are trying to, you know, and so there was this like really heavy, I don't know, heavy, maybe it's like rich affect that sent me scrambling for reading certain kinds of feminist theory because I was trying to figure out how to talk about this affect. And I found some really cool theory by Joan Tronto on feminist ethics of care, where parts of it, of what she talks about in caretaking, line up very, very well with certain kinds of coordination theory, right? And so it was very like cool to have this moment of finding theories to like link together these sort of more instrumental ways of people interacting with these more affective, more value forward ways of thinking about people being together in communities. And so I think for the short term, the value I've been giving is tools for reflection, and then we will get to the data analysis and then see if we can blow that up even bigger.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on how this affects us all in different ways, in particular how it affects, you know, work and family. And I just wondered if, Julie, you might want to expand upon that a bit, because that's like straight in your area of expertise and research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of mentioned some of the ways here we're doing the tech translation through our blogs and our social media accounts and our kind of office hours. And, you know, one of the things that's also, we're trying to think also about how to reach out to families and parents, because some of the things are just around, and families, parents, and then also educators as well, too. And in terms of like, some of this is just reducing expectations, right? And sort of, you know, helping families understand that like, yeah, maybe your kid's not learning quite as much as they were, but they're not going to fall behind because everybody else is sort of like in that same boat. And so some of it is sort of these social problems. And I think, you know, alluding to some of the questions in the Q&A as well, too, around, you know, one of the more interesting interviews we did was around sort of family, you know, there's a big movement in Seattle to get, you know, technology in the hands of kids and families that needed extra devices. And so they were kind of putting out all these technologies into families and donated by, you know, I think Amazon and Microsoft and others in the community, which is a really great effort. And they set up a tech support line, but the people who were calling in were not asking for information about how to log on. They were asking for information around like, how do I find the time to do this with my kid? And so there's definitely a lot of social concerns that are coming up that technology just can't play a role in solving. And so that's been really challenging for sure. So some of it is just being reassuring that it's going to be, you know, like, you know, it's going to be different. It's going to be something that we're going to be challenging with, but everybody's going through this. And so you know, panicking about your kids being behind is going to be a little bit different. And I think the other thing, you know, is that families are very concerned about screen time. I've been following the great screen time debate for many years now, and I was somewhat actually amused right at the beginning of the pandemic. I think screen time is actually a really terrible name anyway, because it really matters what you're doing with these screens. I mean, if my kids are sitting together, cuddled up, playing a Toca Boca app together on the couch, that's amazing screen time, and that's so different from kind of mindlessly watching you know some content on a different thing. So kind of helping people just pay attention to that, like screens are not inherently bad, it's kind of what they're doing with them. And so, you know, like, don't be so concerned about that. You know, make sure they're moving, make sure they're doing these other things, but they'll be okay. And kids are also really resilient too.
I'm actually sort of reassured whenever I hear the little toka boka sound from that app, because I know that I'm probably not going to have to be too concerned about that.
Exactly. It's great. They actually, my kids are actually using Toka Boca hospital game to like talk about coronaviruses in
Oh,
movie. And they're
right.
like, oh, this is the doctor and this one has coronavirus and this one is, so, you know, like technology can be really wonderful resources. So it really just matters on how it's being used for sure.
Mm. Well, and how we use technology to cope with challenges in our home life is really it's a really rich area for exploration. The home life and the work life also are sort of intermeshed now. So we're all grappling with the problems of living and working in the same spaces. And I wanted to ask the panel, how has the pandemic affected how not only what you research and what you're approaching, but how you actually undertake your research? Like how are you we can't like meet with participants in the same way that we might have been able to formerly. How has it affected how you undertake your work?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, we've been trying to do with our work is just really sort of, you do this from a, you know, a design perspective and thinking really thoughtfully around, you know, how, one of the things we were really struggling with is like, we're asking families to do this work as part of our study, and while also recognizing like, these are some of the most overworked people out there, right? And so you have like, yeah, so we wanted to make sure that the things that we were asking to do for our research and for our study and for our design work was actually enhancing their experience, as opposed to being extra work that they have to do. And so, you know, we'd found from previous studies that asynchronous remote communities are really great at building supportive communities. And so the parents were also sharing memes with each other and kind of getting connected with each other, sharing resources with each other. We had a resource mapping exercise that people shared. And so people were discovering some of those things. And so, you know, we've really been had to adapt some of our methods to think about like, how can our methods actually directly benefit the people as well as sort of, you know, not just being really extractive of like, oh, we're getting all this data from them. So really sort of thinking about the methods that we use and how we choose to do them and how they can benefit people. We also try to keep it really short, like try to like no more than 20 minutes a week of activities. And, you know, because it was asynchronous remote, they could do it whenever they wanted, if they were like up in the middle of the night. So really thinking thoughtfully about our methods and how we sort of support family and don't sort of have the research methods get in the way of actually these families that were already really struggling for time.
Kate, Charlotte, how do you have some thoughts about that? How your work is different now?
Yeah, well, I mean, even before, because some of what I study is geographically distributed collaboration, we had to do like some interviews via video conferencing, but now it's all via video conferencing. And so, you know, all of my, you know, research assistants have had to get used to that. I think in some ways it's changed because I think people are actually more willing to participate in the research. But I know people were pretty, you know, good about it before, but now I think people are even more willing because they understand that we're all suffering and that we all need some advice and some insight. And so people are more willing to participate. At the same time, everyone's more stressed and more busy. So it's actually harder to like find times and to get like enough time for like an in-depth interview. So that's changed. I think the affect changes because it's like settled down a little bit now that time has passed, but not really. That, you know, just people are just a little more on edge than they were, and that just changes the tone of how the interviews go. I think from the standpoint of getting students ramped up into doing really excellent interviews, you know, an instantaneous cultural change is somehow people are much more willing to be video recorded now because they're so used to Zoom. Whereas before, people would be like, well, maybe you can audio record, but no video, you know. But now, when you say like, is it okay if I video record? Everyone's just like, sure, whatever, you know. And that's really new, and that's been super helpful for both like keeping in touch with the research, because I have like a larger research team than I'm used to for this project, that we can actually show each other like clips of video, which is very powerful. And also it's good for training because there are a lot of things that I do with my body and my face when I'm interviewing that I don't really realize that I do. And then when students can see the video, then it helps them to learn some more sophisticated tips and things like that.
Mm. Kate, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, our story is slightly different. I mean, the research we do, a lot of it is based on data that's just generated by people's activities online, and those activities have grown. And our biggest problem is that we're buried in data. There's just too many things. We went from like 4 or 5 collections going on at any one time to now more like 25. And the amount of data we have, thankfully we just hired a data engineer with the center, so it's not all going through my PhD students, which they're really relieved about. But there's just so much data right now. We liken it to collecting half of Twitter, but probably even more than that at some point with some of our data collection. So that's part of it. And then the sort of how we work. The most recent project that I'm on is actually a collaboration around election 2020 stuff, tracking misinformation in real time. And that is 4 different organizations working together. We have over 120 people in the collaborations, and sometimes 120 people coming to the same meetings. And in some ways, the fact that we were online only enabled that to be more of a seamless collaboration with people working together across organizations in a lot of different configurations that I think would have been harder to do if we were physically located. We would have tended to be working more with our own groups and not across organizations. So in some ways, that particular collaboration was facilitated by the fact that we're such an online first kind of research project right now. And I do think that things would have been slightly different, and in fact harder had we had the space to be physical. I think it would have created a different kind of dynamic on that project.
So I want to turn, thank you, Kate. I want to turn to some of the questions that we're getting in the Q&A window, because I want to give people a chance to have their fascinating questions heard. And one that I noticed that was really interesting was from Judy Ramey, who asks about the cultural impacts of tech choices. Do you see corporate players taking concrete steps to mitigate the negative impacts of their innovations? And I just wondered if, or maybe are there examples of it? If any, open to anyone who wants to answer, maybe can take that up.
I can start there because I get asked this question every day right now, and that is about the tech companies and misinformation. Certainly, our group has been studying misinformation online for several years now, and COVID-19 certainly saw a bunch of misinformation. That misinformation could map to health impacts. We could map that to society, negative consequences in society. And so we saw the platforms actually take actions on misinformation related to COVID-19 that they hadn't been willing to take before. And the policies became more clear. They started to actually take action based on the policies. They started to take action against influencers and not just everyday people with their policies, including political leaders, and not just in the US, but around the world. And so we did see some of, what I would say an improvement. Going into election 2020, we actually saw some of what they had done with COVID-19, they continued to do and applied to the context of the election in ways that you could kind of see that maybe if they hadn't done it for COVID-19, they wouldn't have been as able to do it, or they wouldn't have been as willing, or they maybe wouldn't have thought that they would have the buy-in from their users. Do I think that's enough? Absolutely not. Clearly, there's still a problem. We've got millions of views on a completely false conspiracy theory about voter fraud right now coming off of YouTube, and that's feeding into an effort for our current president to overturn our democratic election results. So we've got big problems still there, but it has been at least a positive sign that they're willing to make some changes and take action. But I just don't think it's enough. It's probably too late. The kinds of actions they're taking now, if they happened maybe 10 years ago, that could have helped. But a lot of the toxicities we're seeing, it's almost too late to solve in using the methods they're starting with right now.
Relatedly, Kate, Rachel Cicero asks, do you partner with government entities at all?
Well, let's just say that we've been expecting Director Krebs to be fired for some time. That we weren't working directly with the CISA office, but our project, we were collaborating with them loosely, and we have been working with some. It's hard to choose which ones right now are really share our values, but certainly the CISA office, the Internet Security Office at the Department of Homeland Security, was one office that really did care about preserving democracy, and they just had their top 2 people just got fired this week because they did such a good job at protecting our elections. And we were proud to have partnered with them and really supportive of the work that they did with their rumor control program during election 2020.
Also how it influences politics. For example, in Georgia, Raffensperger being asked by his own party to step down. It's kind of, but did one of the other panelists want to weigh in on this same topic or a related topic?
Yeah,
We've got about 3 more minutes.
I'd love to weigh in on Judy's question. And I think that, yes, I absolutely do see corporate players taking concrete steps to mitigate actions. And I think some of them are people who are working inside big tech, and some of those are people who maybe used to be in big tech and have left big tech or are leaving big tech to try to come out with more equitable solutions. Judy asked for a specific example, so I might talk about a symposium that I was in yesterday, where I had the privilege to be on a panel with Catherine D'Ignazio, who wrote Data Feminism, with Annelien Borland who's a senator in the Netherlands who does bioethics and co-design around bioethics policy, and also Nithya Samvasian, who's been doing some interesting research for Google on the Global South. And the whole theme of the first session was around power and boundary objects, in the case machine learning. So we were talking about power issues regarding machine learning, and the whole symposium, which was half a day of talks and panels, was all about folks who are researchers or technology developers, or researchers and technology developers, who are saying, how can we include the voices of individuals and communities in deciding how these machine learning data sets or training data sets are chosen, how the algorithms are designed to give them control in the training of these data sets. So going beyond transparency into actual participation. Okay, and so some of these, and so there was like a really interesting blend of folks who were very multidisciplinary trying to attack that problem. From the design of neural architectures to community engagement techniques. And so it was super inspiring. And that was out of the Google People and AI Research Group. And so I was just really excited to see that work happening.
Wow, indeed. Well, we're just about out of time for questions and answers in this session, but if you have any questions for us or want us to reach out to you, please be sure to post them, because we're still watching the chat and the Q&A feeds. I just want to thank our panelists again and offer my applause for sharing your thoughts and insights at this time about this, and turn it over to Julie to take us to the next portion of the program today.
Great. Yeah, I was just going to say, I've been trying to, I don't know if Charlotte or Kate have time. You can type answers in the Q&A too. So if there's anything that we didn't get to, you want to type a quick response to, you can do that as well too. I've done that for a couple questions. So yeah, thank you, Brock and Kate and Charlotte. And it's been sort of an interesting ride. And I know a lot of you are kind of going through some similar transitions and sort of methods in COVID and things. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. So before we closed, I wanted to bring back Charla if she's here. So Charla is the president of the Alumni Leadership Board. So Charla, are you there?
Hi.
Yay, there you are. Great. I just want to give you a chance to say hello to everybody and connect with everybody. And I can bring back your slides if needed as well.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could do the connect with our board slide.
Will do. Let's see.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Charla. I'm the president of the HCDE Alumni Leadership Board. We are still kind of new, but always eager to connect with all of our alumni. One of the ways you can do that is by emailing our hcdealb@gmail.com. We're happy to take volunteers for events that we put on, or join our mailing list. We're working right now on getting some additional publications out. So we're hoping to do a newsletter so you can keep up to date with what the Alumni Board is doing. We have a survey right now for mentorship and networking so that we can build programs for alumni to alumni connections that really kind of work for you as you're in your careers. And then we also have a Medium publication at that link right there, written by alumni, for alumni, and the larger UX community. And the last thing that I wanted to sort of pitch that was not here was that we actually have continuing education events that we put on as well. Just a few weeks ago, we put on a blockchain UX event that was quite popular, super interesting. It was a panel of blockchain and UX experts. And then we have an event coming up in December about blue lines, which is basically documenting accessible designs. And so I'd love to encourage all of you guys to take a look at that and participate in that. But really just feel free to email us if you've got any questions about the alumni board and how you can get involved or how we can help you.
Great. Thank you so much, Charla. It's been really wonderful to get to know the board, and I know they've been a really great addition to the department since it started. And so, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, I know it was a little bit short today, and you know, professors can talk a long time about their things, as you might have remembered from your time with us. But if there's the other things, I'm sure that Kate and Charlotte would also be okay with me saying it's okay to follow up with them if there's things that we didn't get to. So with that, we're going to bring this event to a close. This event was recorded and we hope to host it on our website. So if you know of friends or alumni who didn't get a chance to come today, or if anybody had to leave early, we'll hope you'll be able to catch the rest of this event. And also be on the lookout. We'll be sending out a survey to you all after the event to gather some more information from you, and also remind you if you're interested in help supporting our students to consider donating to the emergency support fund. So with that, I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank Brock again for hosting, and Charlotte and Kate for sharing about their research, and all of you for coming. I've only been a year into this chair position, but I can't imagine being head of a more wonderful and supportive community, and our alumni are a really, really huge part of that. And so I thank you for this, and many of you I know are giving back already in terms of mentorship and hiring our students and internships. So if you do have a chance and you have some internships or opportunities for our students, I'm sure that they would really love to hear from us. And Melissa Ewing is our community outreach coordinator, and sure she'd happy to be talked to you about opportunities for things like sponsoring capstone projects or participating in our usability testing class if you have projects that might be of interest to our students. And then lastly, we're always looking for people who might be interested in helping us review applications. And so if you're interested in being an external reviewer for admissions applications, I know we're going to be looking for people in winter for that. So feel free to reach out. And with that, thank you, everybody, and hope to see you soon and that you stay healthy and safe. Bye.
Nice job, Julie. That was great.
Thank you.
I wish we had a half an hour more for the Q&A. That was really awesome.
I know. I feel like we could have definitely spent like 2 hours talking. There's so many good questions too that I hope, I don't know if there's a way to save the Q&A somehow.
I'm kind of working on that right now. That's why I didn't want to end the meeting yet.
Yeah. So, because I think it'd be great to follow up with some folks on some of these really
there's some great questions.
This is the part
still recording
where you're milling around afterwards, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In real world space.
Yeah.
How come the recording? Do you want